Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Love of Life podcast, and we have a full house tonight. We have, back by popular demand, Dr. David Vaughan, and he's brought his lovely wife, Diane. We're going to talk about a lot of things, the overturning of Roe V. Wade, crisis pregnancy centers, and more coming up on the Love of Life podcast.
Christian education, because it serves him who says, I am the way, the truth, and the light, is the love of life.
This is the Love of Life podcast, conversations with Jesse and Courtney. All right, thanks again for joining us for the Love of Life podcast. David, recently, and actually both of you can answer this first question. So you recently had George Grant on your Encounter Worldview Matters on KSIV, your radio show. You had George Grant on recently, and you asked him a specific question. So I'm going to ask you, basically, so did you ever think we would see the overturning of Roe v. Wade in our lifetime with such a pernicious, godless culture? Did you think this would happen?
I'll let you go first.
I had hoped.
You would hope?
I did not think it would happen, but I'll tell you what. I was thrilled. I was giving God glory. I was excited. I wanted to party and celebrate. That took place on a Friday morning, and I had not even looked at my phone that morning. And then I finally did, and Hannah had texted me. And Hannah was like, Mom, did you hear? And of course she, let me know. And then my phone was blowing up, and I was just ecstatic. And then I told him, and we were ready to party and celebrate. To God be all the glory. I mean, it's a miracle.
Yeah.
It is a miracle. And His hand has done this work, and He deserves all the credit. I mean, obviously, He used a lot of different people for decades who fought the good fight for the cause of life and the sanctity of human life. But ultimately, He won this, and I was thrilled.
Even used Trump.
Yeah, even used Trump.
He did.
Which, much to the chagrin of some Christians.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Right. Some professing Christians.
But did you think you both have labored when it comes to the right to life for decades now?
Right.
You've worked for Thrive for 10 years?
It is 12 years.
12 years. Mm-hmm. You've been preaching on this for decades.
Right.
So is it something that you thought you would see in your lifetime, or especially during this time?
I don't know that I thought I would see it until Trump appointed conservative justices. Then at that point, I thought it was possible in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But with the old court, no way.
Yeah.
Definitely more hopeful with those three added on.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean I wasn't surprised. I was surprised because I thought that what they would do is continue to kind of winnow away at the rights, the Roe v. Wade. Because what the court likes to do is they don't like to overturn a decision. Mm-hmm. What they like to do is basically, in effect, overturn it without saying that.
Yeah.
They just begin to change it, and eventually it's ignored, and it doesn't come up anymore because it's irrelevant. Mm-hmm. And they were already doing that with Roe. They were already beginning to winnow away, allow more and more restrictions on abortion, even in the first trimester, by pro-life states. Mm-hmm. So I thought, and Roberts even said he wanted to do that. He wanted to go in that direction, not overturn it officially, but allow more restrictions. So I thought that's actually what I thought would happen.
Okay.
But so that was a glorious thing.
Yeah.
I was very emotional, and I cried. I wept. I was very moved, and what a victory.
Yeah. That's a prayer that you pray every night with the boys, is that there would be an overturning, and there was. What you pray with the kids at night.
Yeah, we got to jump in, the kids and I, on the tail end of that, really pressing in prayer. On top of lots of other people's prayers that were already laid up.
Millions, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool to know that we've consecutively prayed and that God answered that so hugely.
Yeah. Before we go any further, let's talk about Worldview Matters. 91.5, 1320. So 91.5 FM, 1320. Thursdays at 2 p.m.
Right.
You have a show.
Right.
You pretty much do interviews, right? Do you
Yeah,
ever?
yeah. I mean, I haven't. I don't generally do commentary.
Okay.
Although I will at times do commentary. I'm planning that in the future.
Sure.
Where I'll just talk about what's in the news, or I'm going to walk through a biblical topic.
Yeah.
But I like to interview people.
Yeah.
Especially authors or ministry leaders.
Yeah.
So I do that a lot.
You recently interviewed George Grant, and upcoming you have Glenn Sunshine and Doug Wilson.
And others, but
And others.
those are names you guys know, right?
Yes.
Well, those are names that a lot of our audience knows as well.
right,
So
right.
yeah, I want them to be
So
informed
tune in.
too. Yes.
So tune in Thursdays at 2:00.
He's a
KSIB
great
Radio.
interviewer.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's very good. He's very good. Okay, so one of the things that we did early on, or right as Roe v. Wade Sunday was happening, instead of Super Bowl Sunday, we called it Roe v. Wade Sunday around here. So we wanted to check in pretty much locally, but we looked at various churches, pastors. What was the response regarding? Were they going to talk about it? Were they even going to mention
after
it?
624?
After 624.
Okay.
So the Sunday after, right? The pastors that preached, normal to their congregations, were they going to mention it? And we found a very mixed. We're not going to name any churches
You
here.
can name them if you want.
Okay, we can if you want. But it was very mixed review. It was very much like some churches rejoiced over this. It really is a time to be excited.
As they should have.
Right.
Some churches pitted abortion. It's bad, they said, but one guy was, abortion's bad, but we also need to look at the life of the woman and what she's going through. So it was this very convoluted, upsetting sort of commentary on what is going on here. Again, a lot of churches rejoiced, but there were other churches that
Some didn't even mention it. They
Well,
didn't say anything.
some didn't say anything at all.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
It's hard to know when we try to evaluate evangelicalism. It's hard to know because the high-profile people versus the regular Joes. The guy that's got 100 people in his church, faithful pastor preaching the word, versus the guys that have 5,000, or the guys that are in denominational leadership and have podcasts and all that. There's a real break between that. In what we call Big Eva. The elites of Big Eva did not rejoice at this. They may have said this is a good thing, but then they went on and on and on about the woman and about the poor and about the Second Amendment and all these things that are irrelevant. I mean, God cares about many of these things, but murder is an abomination to him. And when you say, yeah, this is good, but you're comparing apples and oranges. You're talking about murdering innocent people versus helping someone who's in trouble. Yes, we should help them in trouble, people that are in trouble. But that doesn't justify then murder,
Right.
which is the implication. Because they're in trouble, they can murder an unborn child. Profoundly unbiblical in their thinking. And I think more and more we're seeing Big Eva drift to the left, unfortunately. It happened in the 1920s. Here we are exactly 100 years later, 2020.
Yeah.
We're seeing the conservative movement that came out of the mainline denominations in the 20s. Machen was kicked out of his denomination, started Westminster. People like that who fought the good fight then, built institutions, and now the liberals who are parasitic in the way they function. They don't build anything. They come in and infiltrate and take over other things and eventually destroy those things. And then move on and find something else that conservatives built and destroy those things. So we're in a time of upheaval in the church where all the conservative denominations, the mainline denominations are dead, basically. And the conservatives are now all splitting. The Southern Baptist Convention, I will say, prophesying, they will split. The PCA is going to split. The Methodist Church just recently split over gay rights stuff. And so we're going to see conservatism split, and the liberals will be clearly liberals, which they've been for a long time.
So you'd say this is a twofold blessing. One, obviously, more babies being born is a blessing. It's good.
Right.
But it's also a reveal. right?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure. Yeah.
COVID was a reveal, the state of the churches.
Right.
And even Roe v. Wade, and this being overturned, it really shows the hearts of pastors and people within the congregation.
Well, even politicians.
And it shows politicians' hearts as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. A reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so press on a little bit and tell us biblically, why is the response of the church, why should it be rejoicing? What does the Bible say about life and murder? You've already alluded to, but...
Come on.
Well, I will say that I was very, very happy that when I went to church on Sunday, my pastor gave a pro-life, really victory, celebratory sermon, and I was so thankful. I was so grateful. It was wonderful. So thank you, Dr. Michael Bond, for being faithful. And the question is, why should it be celebratory?
Right. Why should the church rejoice? Why was that a win?
Well, first of all, righteousness triumphed. So
Yes.
when righteousness triumphs,
People rejoice.
people rejoice. The scripture is very clear about that. I mean, since 73, it was an estimated, close to 64 million babies have been murdered. And so if you think about how much more life will happen now, how many more babies will get a chance to live, I mean, I don't understand how you cannot celebrate that. God is pro-life. He is for life. And it doesn't matter where that life is inexistent. It doesn't matter how small that life is, from conception to natural death. God is pro-life. God is for life. We should be for life. We should be caring for life. And when that life, gets to live, we celebrate. We glory in that. And
Well, he is the creator of life, right?
Yeah.
And we see that in Scripture, and clearly in the Word, he forbids murder in the Ten Commandments. He also forbids adultery because that's an attack on the family, and the family is the institution that nurtures life. He's against theft. That's an attack on the family. He's against coveting other people's property and wives and what. That's an attack on the family. So everything the Scripture says that is pro-family, and anything that says pro-murder, pro-theft, pro-covetousness, and it says a lot about all of these things. All of that's an endorsement of life. You have to remember the original... This is interesting, because when you read Genesis 1, it says that God created man, male and female, created he them. And then it says, and then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. He blessed them. It's a blessing, okay? And that, you can call it a command, you call it a blessing. Even after the fall in the world, the old world, the pre-flood world was so wicked that God literally had to wipe out except for Noah and his family, right? Even after the fall and after all the wickedness, when Noah and his sons came out of the ark, God reiterated that same command. Okay, twice he reiterated. Even though people are born in sin, even though we're all fallen, God still says, "My image is good." That's really what he's saying. My image should fill the earth, because everyone is born in God's image, right? And then when God reiterates that to Noah twice, he then specifically mentions capital punishment. That if anybody takes a man's life, his life should be taken by man. And so that isn't, God is hedging about, because the time before the flood is described as a time of violence, okay, where human life had become cheapened. So God is now hedging about human life to protect it. And then with this law, the Mosaic law, when that's instituted, God provides more hedges and more hedges, okay, to protect human life. So clearly God is, to say God's pro-life almost sounds trite, because God is the author of life. Not only does he bring us into existence, every breath we take is based upon his sovereign permission.
Amen.
Okay? At this very moment, he's allowing us to live. Okay? We could leave tonight and not make it home. You don't know, because our times are in his hands. So the measure of his pro-life mentality is the measure of the billions of people alive, and there would be more, except those who hate God love death, it says in Proverbs. And so in the West especially, you see this hatred of life, this hatred of human life particularly. And of course, people like Bill Gates and others are trying to import that to Africa. They're trying to, and thankfully, there's many Christian countries in Africa now, and they're resisting what the West is pushing on them. This anti-biblical, anti-life, anti-natalist view. So, I mean, if you go through Scripture and pay attention when you're reading, God celebrates life. He condemns murder. He hates and abhors bloodshed. Says it's an abomination to him to shed innocent blood. You can't get any stronger words than that in Scripture. But then you see him celebrating the family in Scripture. I've had people say to me, well, the Bible doesn't say, there's only a couple verses about homosexuality, or there's only a couple verses about, maybe that one verse about abortion. That's not the way you interpret Scripture. Okay? If God says something is wrong and he says it one time, then it's wrong. Okay?
Right.
But what God rather does is he doesn't want us to have an anti-life message. He wants us to have a life message. So what God does is he affirms. So when we talk about the mandate, the original mandate to be fruitful and multiply, is it really a command? Because it doesn't say he commanded. It says he commanded them, but it says, be fruitful. It says he blessed them. Okay, this is affirmation. This is confirmation on what is good, what is holy, what is righteous. And that's what we see in Scripture. He celebrates family. He celebrates childbirth. Barrenness is a bad thing in Scripture, right? So it's an entire ethos. And unfortunately, as cultures abandon God, they abandon life. And George did a great job in his book, Third Time Around, of showing variety of ancient cultures and how they were pro-death. As men abandoned God and abandoned either special revelation or even natural revelation, they turned toward death. So the Lord is the maker of life, the creator of life, the nurturer of life. Everything that grows is from His Spirit. We have such a mechanistic, naturalistic view of things. We're not seeing the world the way God sees it at all.
Yeah.
So, and unfortunately, people who are supposed to be knowledgeable in the Word, who are supposed to be shepherds of the church, don't have a biblical worldview. They really don't. Or they would have rejoiced when this was overturned.
Yeah.
Because Roe V. Wade was a very, very wicked law.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I say one more thing about Roe v. Wade?
Yeah, definitely.
And I also think it's important that we understand that, there will be abortions going on. 25 states are probably pro-abortion. Or, I don't know the exact number, but the country's basically split. There will be abortions. Okay, there's always going to be sin. And I've heard some critics say, well, it's not going to stop abortion, so why does it matter that it was overturned? It matters because the magistrate is supposed to be God's servant, his deacon, it says. Okay? And when your representatives publicly endorse and enforce evil, they are inviting the judgment of God, not just on them as people, but on the nation that they represent. Okay? So when that was overturned, I'm telling you, something shifted in the heavens. Okay? Yes, God punishes people individually for their sin, but he punishes nations not just for the amount of sin, but for what the leaders have done and are doing. And so when an unrighteous law is removed, that is clearly God's mercy upon us, because we are a nation under judgment. I mean, one of the reasons we're seeing this cultural decline rapid decline because we've been a nation under judgment. A lot of Christians say, well, judgment's coming because of abortion. No, judgment is here because of abortion. Okay, it's already here. God hates the shedding of innocent blood. And now we have people in the highest levels of our government that don't even know what a woman is.
Yeah.
Okay, you're talking about what Romans 1 speaks of with a reprobate mind. Okay, this is a reprobate mind is not just a natural consequence. It is a judgment in itself from God. If you do not love the truth, God will turn you over to delusion. Okay, and so hopefully, with the overturning of Roe, God is saying, He'll relent, if you will. But the church, unfortunately, especially a lot of people in Big Eva, are just they are not aware of what's happening. They don't understand the times we live in, unfortunately. This is not a time to just get along and go along.
Yeah. Or as one pastor I heard, he said that the church needs to focus on unity. And that's pretty much all he said about Roe v. Wade.
No.
He said we just need to focus on unity.
The church needs
what
to
does that
focus
mean?
on righteousness and truth.
Right.
And we live, unfortunately, in a time of conflict. There are times when societies go through times of relative peace, You remember, the Lord of the Rings where Frodo's sitting there and Gandalf's talking and Frodo's complaining about how hard this is.
Yeah.
And then, I don't have the exact quote, but basically Gandalf says, it's not our choice what times we're born in. We're born in this time. We're born in a time of conflict. We have to fight. And so we're in a time of social revolution, and we have to fight.
Yeah.
With all the means at our disposal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Speaking of means, we'll talk about crisis pregnancy centers. But it kind of coincides with that doozy of a question that you got recently from somebody.
I heard this question because I think there is a lot of confusion, and then shepherds who maybe aren't addressing these things, they don't help that. But I've heard the argument that in the Old Testament, God commands the slaughtering of a nation, including babies. So how are we saying, he frowns upon abortion, but he commands these slaughterings in the Old Testament? How do we?
Do you want me to answer that?
I do, but I will comment because that is a very hard question and a question probably in a lot of people's minds who know Scripture and who know that happened in various people groups where the Lord just wiped them out. And you wonder, well, wait a minute, God's supposed to be loving, God's supposed to be good. How in the world can He do that? I actually had wondered that recently myself. It was almost like the Lord kind of showed me through what is happening in our current times, where you're seeing now young children who have learned such wickedness from their parents that now it is just part of them, where they show no respect. They are glorying in shame, and you heard about those, I guess they were different bars that allowed drag queens to come, and they allowed the parents
children
to bring the little children to come see them, and they were mixed in with it. And so it was almost, for me, I was like, gosh, they are learning this, and it's that generational sin or wickedness that is now such a part of that child, that they almost seem given over to such corruption, and so then you have just so much pollution, right? And not that I'm saying that child's polluted, but I am saying that child has learned such grave sin, that is what is his truth. And so then that is how he will live and, declare his life and his or her life. And so for me, I was just like, wow, well, could it have been possible that is why the Lord had to wipe out that, people group? Because the sin was, from the top down. It was so deep. It was so inbred in the generations. And he, as a just God, that would be the just thing to do. So it's hard to really wrap your head around it and wrap your brain around it. But I just don't think we really understand evil in its purest form. Mm-hmm. And it is not good. Mm-hmm. And sin in its purest form. And so that is what God is protecting people from. So that's just some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So it's God's justice.
It is.
From an evil, debased culture, right?
Well, this could be a whole podcast.
Yeah.
No, really, if you wanted to get into it, but because it's multi-layered, I think. Now, so I'm talking to Christians, I'm assuming. So I'll give that answer. If I was talking to an unbeliever, I would approach it. I'd get to the same conclusion, but I'd approach it differently. But to Christians, if you believe that God is the creator of life, then you believe that God is also the one who can take life. Not only can he take life, he takes every life. Mm-hmm. When we die, God takes our life. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Most people
we don't just happen to die.
Right.
God's like, oh, gee, I didn't know he was going to die that day.
Right.
Our days are numbered, it says.
Yes.
Okay. So my day's numbered, my time is numbered, and God will take my life. Okay. So, and that is his prerogative because he gave my life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's the most fundamental thing to understand. Because you hear Christians complaining about God doing things as if God doesn't have a right to do something. He's the Lord, the Almighty God. He brought us into existence. He can take us out of existence, if you will. I mean, I know we exist in the eternal realm. I'm talking about our life here on earth. Our temporal existence is under his sovereign control. He can give us a long life or a short life. That's up to him. Mm-hmm. That's the first point. The second point is God being a just God, not just a loving God, because that's the modern ethos. Yeah. God has only one attribute, and that's love. Mm-hmm. That is unbiblical. As a matter of fact, it's worse than unbiblical. It's heretical because it leads to a very distorted image of God. It is not the God of the Bible. Okay? The God of the Bible is a loving God, but he is a just God. He's a jealous God, and he's a God that punishes evil because he is righteous. He rejoices in righteousness, mm-hmm. and he hates wickedness. He hates wickedness. As Diane pointed out, part of the problem is we do not see sin for what it is in the eyes of God because we do not see holiness as it is in the character of God. Mm-hmm. Even though we are born again, we must continue to be transformed in our mind, in the spirit of our mind. That is the deepest level of our being. We must be transformed to see what God sees. Mm-hmm. And so we say, oh, how could God send someone to hell for sin? What hell tells you is you don't see sin the way God does. Because clearly Jesus taught that there's eternal punishment. And that means that sin must be so bad in the eyes of God that it would deserve such a punishment. Mm-hmm. And we don't see that. Mm-hmm. Okay? We do not feel the weight of that. So as it comes to a culture, people will complain about God, ordering, quote, what they call genocide. But it's clear from Scripture that those cultures were profoundly wicked from the top to the bottom. And God hates wickedness. And God has every right as God, mm-hmm. to destroy a culture or an individual because of their sin. Mm-hmm. Okay? If you say he doesn't have a right to do that, then you're saying he doesn't have a right to punish evil. And you're saying, therefore, God is not moral. That's what you're really saying. Yeah. That his judgments are amoral. Yeah. That they're arbitrary. They're not arbitrary. Okay, and so he can remove individuals who are evil. He can remove people groups that are evil, and he has done so throughout history. As a matter of fact, history is a long story of nations rising up, becoming wealthy, rebelling against God, and then God destroying them. Mm-hmm. That is the pattern of human history.
Mm-hmm. So recently, Elizabeth Warren came out right after Roe v. Wade was overturned, and she went after crisis pregnancy resource centers and said, we need to go after them. They're misinforming women. They're dangerous. So you have worked now for 12 years at Thrive. Is it dangerous in these? Are they beating women? Are they misinforming women regarding their pregnancies? What is going on here at crisis pregnancy centers?
If Elizabeth Warren was sitting in front of me, I would ask her to come with me, walk into a pregnancy medical help center and see what they do. Are you willing to go and see what they do? Because no, we don't hurt women, we don't manipulate women, we don't coerce women. I have seen thousands of women who have come into a pregnancy center. The one I worked at, I'm now just a consultant, but it was Thrive St. Louis Express Women's Healthcare, and we never coerced them. We never manipulated them. We believe that woman should have what they call informed consent. So for somebody who wants an abortion, you want them to have informed consent. Well, what does that mean? That means you give them all the information that they need to know about whether it's fetal development, whether it's abortion procedures, whether it's the risks of that particular procedure. You want them to have informed consent, and then the decision is theirs. It is their decision. By no means would we have ever forced our decision upon them. Women, they're smart. They have all the information before them. They'll make a better choice. And the majority of the time, I would say at least if a woman came to Thrive and went through the patient process, got the consultation on all options, whether it was on parenting, on adoption, on abortion, received the medical services, lab grade pregnancy test, a limited obstetrical ultrasound, and STD testing. If they got all of that, usually between 85 to 90% of that abortion-minded or abortion-determined woman would change their mind. And so they changed their own mind by just walking through our process. And it was always in an environment that wasn't judgmental. It was very loving. It was very supportive.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Well, Warren's saying that CPC's...
that we lie.
Yeah, but isn't it really more accurate to say that Planned Parenthood's lying?
I would say it's very accurate.
They're withholding information.
They are withholding.
There's different ways of lying. By saying a falsehood, by not saying a truth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in Missouri, they're supposed to tell the truth, right?
Yeah. Well, prior to Roe v. Wade being overturned, the Missouri law, one of the Missouri laws was that if a woman went to an abortion facility, they were, by law, they had to give that woman what was called the Informed Missouri Consent Booklet. And in that booklet, it talked about their rights to obtain a legal abortion in the state of Missouri. And one of the first things in this booklet was put out by the Missouri Health Department. And one of the first things that is said in that booklet is that they wanted the woman to understand what an abortion was, and that an abortion would, interfere with the development of a human life, would actually end that human life that has begun to develop. And so it would go over fetal development, and in these beautifully laid out pictures of fetal development. We would show women these pictures. Some of them would choose life based on the fact that they heard that the heart begins to beat at maybe day 21. Most medical textbooks say day 21, the heart will begin to beat. Now, you can't see that beating heart on an ultrasound until about 6 weeks. But some of them change your mind just because of that. Now, I will say, yes, Planned Parenthood and abortion mills, they don't speak the truth to their patients. They don't give them all the information so that they can make an informed decision at all. I have so many stories that I could share. One in particular, I was doing an ultrasound on this one gal. She was at about 10 weeks gestation. She was post-abortive, and her prior abortion was at about the same gestational week, so at 10 weeks. So when I did the ultrasound, she's laying on the exam table and I'm doing the ultrasound. She pretty much flipped out as she looked at the screen, and she just started to exclaim, are those arms? Are those legs? A 10-week preborn baby is a fully formed baby. You can see arms, you can see legs. She's like, is that the heart beating? And she's crying. And then she says, and I will never, ever forget it, they lied to me. They lied to me. Now, I'm not sure where she had her abortion, if it was at Planned Parenthood or another abortion facility, but clearly they lied to her. And again, as a sonographer, you can tweak that abdominal probe so maybe that baby doesn't look so much like a baby. You can tweak the probe where they're not getting the full image of the fetus. No. And so if you want them to make an informed decision, you're going to do that ultrasound correct. You're going to make sure that they can see the baby, and so many of them then would choose life. But
that number you threw out, 85%. Mm-hmm. Think about that number.
It's high.
Yeah.
Profoundly, and 85% of the women walking in Planned Parenthood aren't walking out.
Right.
Why? Well, they're not getting that information.
Right. And Planned Parenthood is not pro-choice because they don't offer the other options like adoption, like parenting. Most women, they don't want to have that abortion, but they feel like it's their only choice. Mm-hmm. But if they are presented with, wait a minute, if you parent, this pregnancy center, we can offer you, let's say you're scared to death to be a mom. It's a big deal. It's a lot of work, right? Well, we can offer parenting classes. We want to help you become a good mom. We have free classes, and then you can earn what we call baby bucks or points that you can take these and you can go into our resource shop and you can buy material items that you need for your baby. Obviously, you need a lot of stuff when you have babies, right? And some of the women would tell us they had needed to purchase diapers or baby wipes for an entire year because they went through the parenting classes at Thrive and they got these material items from our resource shops. And then what is really beautiful is that they are in community. They are in a community. They're with other moms going through, a very similar thing, the same thing. They're getting mentored. Some of them get help with job employment. And it is a beautiful thing to then know that, well, maybe this is doable. Mm-hmm. Maybe I can do this now. And then, there are other resources. Missouri has a wonderful program called A2A. It's called Alternatives to Abortion. They offer a lot more material assistance and even financial assistance to women who decide to, not abort their child and have their baby. And so some of these women will get plugged into that program through Thrive. They meet with a case manager on a regular basis, and it is so helpful. And so
in sum, Warren is lying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or
she's not telling the truth. And a common slander against the whole movement is, they love the fetus, but they don't really care for women. It's a lie. Not only the centers, like Diane's pointing out, provide assistance to the mother, the state provides assistance. And that's true all over the country. Mm-hmm. There's so many welfare programs now for moms, especially moms with children. It's just a lie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you even see that in the church. I've heard Christians argue that before. Like, oh, you care about the baby, but you don't care about the woman. It's that convoluting, pitting against, here's a woman, we need to care. You don't care about her. You just care about this unborn baby.
Right.
It's
Well, anything in the world you hear in the church now, apparently.
Apparently, yes.
I remember one of the
Yeah.
last times I was able to, I went to Jeff City and I was able to share in front of a congressional committee on a certain bill, and one of the Congress persons basically really called out Thrive, and I invited her. I just said right then and there, I invited her to come and visit Thrive to see what we do. And she just, they don't want to see, they don't want to know.
Yeah.
All they want to do is be able to kill babies.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Why,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's also an industry. Baby killing is an industry.
Oh, yes.
Well, someone pointed out in an article I read recently, if Planned Parenthoods are closing now in red states, that means that abortion was their business.
It was. It was very
Right.
revealing.
Right.
Yeah, very revealing about what they really do. They claimed it was only like 3% of what we do.
Yeah.
Well, if that's true,
No.
you wouldn't be closing
shutting
shop.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No way.
You'd still be doing all your other services,
Yeah.
but no.
I will say too that this is a time now. Now that we're in a post-Roe world, for the church to really step up,
Yep.
because they shouldn't just rely on pregnancy centers to be doing this work. Obviously, a lot of their staff and volunteers comes from the church, but it's also an opportunity for the church to rise up and really reach out and try to minister to these women and their babies, and even the fathers. I mean, oh my goodness, that
There's a
is
great
such a
need in that
huge
area.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would that look like? What would that look like for a local church who says we're burdened that now there's going to be this influx of babies and women who need help, or
Okay,
and
here's how it looks
potential fathers? Yes.
since we did it.
Right.
First, the pulpit has to preach pro-life message, anti-abortion, but even more than anti-abortion, pro-life. That means having children, many children, glorifying the family, building a community of people that love and understand the biblical concept of the family.
Pause that real quick. So, what if you go to a church? What if you're somebody who cares about these things, but you realize, or you know now, my pastor, I don't think he does care about these issues. What would be the role of the congregant, the person who is aware? Should they go to their pastor? Should they just?
Yes. I mean, I think with any, regardless of the issue, if you have a serious disagreement with the leadership, go talk to them. Maybe even provide some resources for them. I don't like to be too hard on pastors because it's a very hard job. But having said that, sometimes pastors are just ignorant of things. They've not been exposed to certain books or authors or other things. Provide resources, give them information, and then give them some time to assimilate that, and then see if you see a change. At some point, if there's no change, then the problem isn't ignorance. The problem is they're making a choice to avoid this. And many pastors do. The majority of evangelical churches still, after all these years, still will not talk about abortion.
Yeah.
And at that point, then I think your only option really is to leave and find a pro-life church. So the first step is that the leadership's committed to proclaiming that message of life, which also includes the message of healing for post-abortive women. Half the women going into abortion clinics are professing Christians. Okay, this is the sin the church does not want to talk about. And they say, pastors will say, well, if I talk about abortion, women will be upset because they've had abortions and they'll be traumatized. To which I would say, you're leaving them in bondage. You're leaving them unforgiven, and they need ministry. So you have to address this for their sake, not to traumatize them, but to offer the healing of Jesus Christ and the forgiveness that he offers them. I saw actually a YouTube video last night of a woman who had had an abortion. And I've counseled women who've had abortions. And she said, I came to Jesus and I got saved. And she said, there was one sin I never really felt forgiven of, and that was the sin of abortion. And I think there are many women like that in our churches, and they need the leadership to stand up and say, abortion is wrong, it is a sin, but Jesus will forgive that sin, and Jesus will heal you of the trauma of that sin, and then partner with a pro-life center. What we did is I preached the life message. I got a lot of pushback. Basically got forced out of one church because I was pro-life. And built that ethic in the leadership. And then what we did is we adopted, essentially is what happened. You adopt a local PRC. That means you support it with people in your church. You encourage people to volunteer. We raised money for her to get training to be on the staff. As a church, we did that. So the community embraced the call. Just like you would support a missionary going overseas, you support a missionary to go work or to volunteer. You support the organization financially, and you support it in prayer. So if every church in our nation would adopt a pro-life center and support them by prayer, volunteers, maybe even staff, and giving, it would just be transformative.
Yeah.
So that's what they need to do. But it starts with the leadership.
Yeah, and can I add something?
You can add anything you want.
I was just going to say, if you approach your pastor and you ask them about these issues and perhaps why they aren't addressing them, and maybe it is because they are uninformed. So let's say they're open. A lot of times people expect the pastor to do everything, but God calls your ordinary person to get involved. I was an ordinary mom, and I definitely sense a calling on my life to get involved, and so I got involved. And so if you had people that did feel that call to get involved and then had the pastor's blessing, then they start that ministry, or they recruit those people to try to help out that local pregnancy center. It's really a beautiful thing. I also want to comment that most pregnancy centers now will kind of have developed ministry support and counseling to help that mom who's had that abortion and they need healing and recovery. And so part of the patient process at Thrive, one of the last steps, even if some of those patients do decide to abort their baby, since we've developed such a good relationship with them, they will still let us follow up with them. And as we do, and we ask them, how are you doing? Sometimes they will say, I'm never doing that again. That was the worst thing that I've ever did in my life. Some of them are very, they're just very cold, and they just don't want to think about it. Oh, I'm fine. But some of them are very open then to getting care, post-abortive care, and then we'll plug them in, and they can go through. Really, it's a biblical counseling study that takes them to really see that they can be forgiven. Forgiveness is offered in Jesus Christ, and they can come to really experience that forgiveness and really, have that opportunity to repent and then experience that forgiveness that God has given them, and they're free. A
lot of women that go to these centers for information about abortion or an STD test, they get saved. This is a mission, evangelistic mission field, and churches really ought to see the value of that. So they're doing pro-life ministry, but they're doing evangelism too.
Yeah. Definitely. That was one of the just really awesome things about Thrive, is that also part of the process is to be able to share the gospel with our patients, but we do it very tactfully. We don't, beat anybody over the head with the Bible or Jesus. It's presented in a very tactful way, and we get their permission to, share the gospel with them, and just to have that opportunity to pray. I got to share the gospel with so many women that I would have not otherwise really had that opportunity. Because a lot of them are coming in such great need and crisis that they're open so that they were open, and just to be able to pray with them. And some of them did accept Jesus, and that was beautiful.
So it is a mission field.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what are helpful things for Christians to pray? for these centers, for these women, do you have any suggestions for what prayers, how they can cover them in prayer?
I'll let Diane go first.
Yeah, well, I would say do more than pray, but pray. Of course, the laborers are few everywhere, right? And so pray for laborers. I mean, Thrive is in constant need of volunteers and staff. And there's other centers, pregnancy resource centers, that also have that need. And so pray that God provides those workers. Pray, yes.
So when you say volunteers, what would that actually look like? Say somebody's not trained medically, they
Yeah.
don't have a background in any of that.
Right.
Can somebody who just says, hey, I'm interested,
Yeah.
can they knock on Thrive's door, give them a call?
Absolutely. They could, you don't have to be medical to be involved.
Okay.
I mean, Thrive is a medical facility. It's a medical center, women's center. Not all pregnancy resource centers are fully medical. Thrive was fully medical, but we also utilized non-medical volunteers and staff, and they would help. They would, they could be in a role that we called a patient advocate. They basically met with that woman first, kind of reviewed their needs, what they were coming in the center for, went over some initial paperwork, and they were their advocate, and they kind of followed them through the patient process. So they were with them when they had the ultrasound, and then they were with them when they walked out of the center. And they kind of had that. They were also the ones that got to share the gospel, that particular role. The medical people were doing also, other things that were medical. So, but they could also help out with administrative duties, like, making copies, putting together charts, filing things.
Clerical work, reception work. There are churches that even come in and have adopted a center, and they clean it once a week.
Wow.
They do cleaning.
Yeah, that's huge.
We need men to drive the mobile units.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great need because the mobile units may not go out because there's no drivers. So,
And we're in
if
St.
you're
Louis.
pro-life and want to be part of helping a center, obviously pray.
Mm-hmm.
You can give weekly, monthly,
Financially.
however you give. But just say, I want to help. What do I need to do? I mean, I did that 30-something years ago. I mean, when Thrive wasn't even Thrive yet, I said, I want to help. My gift is really public speaking because that's what I do as a calling. And then they gave me some training, and I went around and talked to churches about pro-life ministry.
Wow.
And what the centers do, So, they'll use you. You'll be used because there's a need for all those areas.
Yeah.
And there's several locations, and we're talking St. Louis. Are they outside of St. Louis,
Yeah.
or is it primarily
Well, if you're talking
here in the
Thrive,
St. Louis
it's
metro?
Well, go on.
If you're talking about Thrive, there's 3 clinics. There's one in the city on Lindell. There's one in St. Peters, and there is one in North County, in Bridgeton area. Then there's a Thrive in the Metro East area in Godfrey, Illinois. We do have some Thrives in other states because we have gone national. One of the big things that Thrive is doing now is really offering telehealth services. And so Missouri is part of what's called a compact state, which means as a nurse, I can use my nursing skills with another patient in another state as long as that state is part of the compact.
Part of the compact.
Part of the compact, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And so now, the big thing is if they get phone calls in other states and these women are abortion-minded or abortion-determined, then they're finding pregnancy centers where they can refer them to those centers. So
The other thing, can I say one other thing, is that and we're talking about Thrive because of her experience there, but there are many other pro-life organizations in the area. There are other PRCs, okay, CPCs, whatever you want to call them. But there's also other pro-life activity. There's educational organizations. There's political organizations. All of these are important. All of them work together. So you might say, and I don't want to do that center thing, but man, I'd be really good at writing a blog, or I'd be good at doing marketing for. You can contact different. There's just a lot of pro-life. There's a lot of pro-life work that isn't center focused.
Okay.
But it ultimately supports what the centers do. So there's also those options. A lot of pro-life opportunities. Google pro-life organizations in the U.S. that do it in your state. Of course, with Google these days, you might have to do a little searching, but eventually you can find information.
Yeah, or not use Google. Use a different, use something else.
Something else, right?
Another
Yeah.
thing that churches can do, they can host like a baby shower and bring in material items for these women who take the classes, so have a diaper drive. They can do that. Just drop off a bunch of diapers at one of the centers. Oh my gosh, that's huge.
Yeah.
Baby wipes, formula. Of course,
Yeah.
with the shortage of formula, that is a huge need.
Yeah.
And not all women breastfeed, so...
So contrary to Elizabeth Warren's opinion about what you do, it's all false. I mean, you really are helping women. And you're not just helping the baby, you're helping women.
No, oh my
right?
gosh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just don't understand how people can just say things like that. I mean, I can understand if they're saying, they think that we lie to women, but we don't. I mean, we offer medically accurate information to these women. We get, information from the, credible organizations like, ACOG or, the Missouri Health Department. And a lot of them, too, though, we are finding that there are some doctors who are very life-affirming that, really are willing to help out. So if you have, if you want to ask some certain questions about, different things, they're so helpful. And,
Yes.
Another, I think, misnomer that is going around with the overturning is that women will die. And there are all these things that won't be taken care of if there's an epidemic pregnancy. Can you speak to some of that? And are those complete falsehoods? What is this? Is it just fear mongering?
Yes.
The short answer is yes.
The short answer is definitely yes. Both, an ectopic and miscarriage, those, neither one of them have anything to do with obtaining an abortion. For a woman to obtain an abortion, they are deciding to end the life of a child, of a human being. They want to take that life. Okay, so in the if a woman is experiencing an ectopic pregnancy, that can be a life-threatening situation for the woman, and that means that the potential pregnancy that they have is developing outside the uterus. So it could be mainly and mostly they do occur in the fallopian tube, but they can occur elsewhere. But it is a life-threatening situation and can be for the mom. And so that pregnancy cannot continue to develop.
It's not really viable, is it?
No, it is not. It is non-viable.
So doesn't that mean it's not technically an abortion?
Therefore, it is not an abortion.
Exactly. Okay.
And because you're not ending that life, it cannot be sustained outside of the uterus. And
Eventually, that baby would miscarry?
Yes, it dies because it's not implanted in the uterus where it gets the nutrients it needs, but then it also can cause much harm to the mom because that developing fetus, if it is developing in an environment where it's not supposed to, and it's not getting the things it needs to develop properly, then it can cause the fallopian tube to rupture, and then you have hemorrhaging that the mom can experience, which she could die from, and women have died from that. Right. And some people think, well, can't you just take that fetus and implant it in the uterus? That is not possible, and it has never happened. Who knows? Maybe in the future, some medical technology and advancements will make that possible, but it can't happen at this point in time. With miscarriage, that baby is not alive. That baby has not developed. That baby has already died or is in what they call a fetal demise. There is no
it's dying
turning back to continue to live. Short from a miracle. But so that would not be an abortion to then treat that. So if you're treating an ectopic, if you're treating a miscarriage, neither one of them means that you are intentionally causing an abortion. No, you are treating, you are doing what is necessary to help the life of the mother, be sustained, and treating that mom to health. And so that includes removal of that miscarriage or removal of that tubal pregnancy, that ectopic. So
Yeah, that's fear mongering.
it is.
Because
it is not.
Even a pro-life state like Missouri, which has very pro-life laws, recognize ectopic and miscarriages as non-abortions. Treating those things are not outlawed, and no doctor is going to be prosecuted if he treats those.
Yeah, no.
That is fear mongering from the left.
Yeah, they have to come up with things to, make this whole situation look like the people who are on the side of life look really bad and look like, they just want to hurt women. And, treating ectopic and miscarriages help that woman, help save that woman's life. And so every doctor, who thinks they can't treat an ectopic or treat a miscarriage, they know better. They know better. So that's just ridiculous to think that, oh my gosh, well, I can't do that now because it's going to be an abortion and I'll get thrown in jail. No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Good to know. Anything else?
Yes, I have
Yes.
some more.
Yes.
Or on the back.
What
side.
else do you
That's good.
have?
Well, since we're talking about children and saving them, can you give us some biblical reasons that children matter? Why do children matter? You've alluded to the family, but maybe expound a little bit more on that.
I thought you were going to talk about contraception.
Oh, we can do that too.
Why don't we do that and then maybe wrap it up? We'll let the pros talk. Well, I think
been talking a lot.
I
You
think
answered that
this
other
is a big problem in the church, the contraception thing.
Okay.
Because I think, as you guys shared on your podcast, your own story, your own journey, there's a lot of ignorance about it.
Yeah.
And I think if we're going to build a pro-life culture in the church, that has to be talked about, has to be explained, So I didn't want to miss that point. I know it's your interview. I don't want to try to run things, but
No.
No, that's great. Yes.
Feel free
so talk to us, Diane.
to step in.
So what's your question about
So,
contraception?
Okay.
Well, we have, recently discovered that contraception that we thought, hormonal contraception, the pill, was fine and pro-life and just, allowing you to space your pregnancies, not potentially end one.
And then some very wise people gave us a book that completely
Very
changed
wise.
our mind. I don't know who they were, but it helped us to see things from a medical perspective, from the pill perspective of what's really going on.
Yeah. So
Good.
maybe explain again, if somebody didn't hear our last podcast, what do hormonal forms of birth control actually do, and what falls under that category?
Okay. Well, first I'll say this, that the contraception industry makes a lot of money. And,
A lot of money.
they don't want to see women not purchase the pill and not be on the pill or not have a hormonal IUD in place. I mean, they want that. They're making lots of money. And so, of course, doctors are going to be prescribing that. And then you're going to get into a situation where they're not going to offer that woman informed consent, where they really understand what happens when this woman takes hormonal contraception into their system. And so, as a nurse, and then even as I have been under David's preaching, where he preached a biblical worldview, and he would preach on topics, pro-life topics, and topics on marriage and family, and the use of contraception. I learned then that I wouldn't have known, otherwise, that when someone is on the pill or uses a hormonal IUD, even something like you can get contraception that's an implant in the arm or an injection with a Depo-Provera shot. that they have to take every 3 months. Well, all of those are hormonal. And so what can happen, and the thing about this type of contraception, you don't necessarily know what action it will use to get to the means that it's going after,
which is no baby.
Which is no baby, no child. But the 3 types of actions that these contraceptions will work by would be either to prevent ovulation, so that egg is not released from the ovary, hence it can't be fertilized by a sperm. No baby. Okay, that's not an abortion patient. That's what you would want. But let's say you have an early pregnancy where you did recently conceive, and then the pill might act to it will interrupt the lining of the uterus in such a way where it makes that environment hostile to that fertilized egg, so it cannot implant into the wall of the uterus. And so in that situation, what has happened is that it has become an abortifacient. That fertilized egg now it's gone. And so then it's abortifacient. And a lot of people don't realize that. And then another way it can take action is through causing the cervical mucus to be thickened so that the sperm can't actually get to the egg. And so, of course, that doesn't, that's not an abortifacient, and that would be fine. But you just don't know what action, and a lot of times you don't know where the woman is in her cycle to know how it's going to be used.
Can that be different from month to month? 1 month it prevents the release of an egg, then the next month it thins the lining.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you could use it in 1 month it prevents, and so
you don't. You
then
just
the
don't
next
know.
month you've actually had an abortion.
Wow.
And I
not know it.
Right.
You're
I even
unaware.
specifically asked my OBGYN. There's nothing that's an abortifacient about the pill, right? No.
Yeah.
So why is that? Why do some medical doctors, not even know that?
Well, go on. You're the nurse.
Well, I was just going to say they choose not to know it. They choose not to be informed, and they choose not to inform their patients. How often do you have a doctor really sit down with you and go through, this medication in a way that's really good education on what you're going to be putting in your body, what you're going to be ingesting? They're going over the action, the side effects, long-term, short-term. They don't take the time to do that. But if you read the insert, a lot of the inserts, and of course it's such small print, they'll talk about how it will interrupt or it can affect the lining of the uterus. But then if you're not really educated, you don't really know what that means. You don't really know, oh, well, gosh, if I have an early pregnancy and it's interrupting the lining of my uterus, that means that baby could be aborted. They might not just know terminology or know that kind of thing, but
yeah, that was me.
it's shameful.
I read that line of it can thin the uterus lining, and I thought, okay. You read that. I'm looking for the word abortifacient. I'm looking for
they're
not
not
able
use
to
that
implant.
terminology, boy.
Here's another thing that COVID revealed: that the pharmaceutical industry does not have our best interest at heart.
Yeah.
They're not trying to heal us. They're trying to make money.
Yeah.
Okay. So doctors are not pharmacists, believe it or not. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
So they don't know what a drug does unless the pharmacy company tells them what it does. So they have salesmen that sell drugs to doctors that they want their drugs pushed. They have to educate the doctor on what it does. Well, if they want to sell this thing, they don't want to say, "Hey, this is an abortion pill." And in some cases, I think doctors are just ignorant, but they're choosing not to know, because I would think a good doctor would want to know what he's recommending and what its harms are. But in some cases, they don't know. In other cases, they do know, and they're actually pro-abortion. You'd think a gynecologist wouldn't be pro-abortion. We had, with one of our kids, we had our doctor say, "Oh, maybe I ought to consider an abortion." We're like, "What?"
Wow.
So you've got doctors that are pro. Now, they'll never do an abortion, But they'll put you on a pill that's basically an abortion pill. And they know.
Wow.
So it depends on your doctor.
Now, I don't want to say that every time a woman takes a pill, they're causing an abortion. That is just not the case.
Right.
But the fact that it can cause an abortion should really be a wake-up call, I think, to every Christian woman and Christian man in that relationship, that marital relationship, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and let me just say this. The odds are if you take it for years, it'd be hard to believe that one of those months that there wasn't. I mean, one of those cycles, there was not. I mean, maybe not
It
by
didn't
God's
use
grace.
that third
Yeah,
mechanism.
But that is a possible mechanism. So clearly, we don't recommend the pill. I mean, I never recommend it as a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes the mini pill, the regular pill, just anything hormonal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they can make a pill that prevented conception.
Well, that was the other thing we had read, that the definition in the 70s changed.
Yeah.
Conception, what that meant. It was no longer
that's how they work.
instantaneous.
They changed the meaning of words. Woman doesn't mean woman anymore.
And pregnancy
we
also
said.
changed, the definition. I mean, a woman wasn't, pregnant until implantation occurred.
Wow.
So if the baby doesn't implant, then technically it wasn't a pregnancy, even though that baby is
Conceived,
has DNA, has gender, has everything that it needs. Yeah.
Wow.
They put a lot of work into hiding truth.
That's what darkness does, right?
That's what darkness is.
Well,
Yeah.
the sad thing is, it's so unfortunate that so many Christians like us were just ignorant. I mean, just simply ignorant.
Right.
It, for whatever reason, the information didn't siphon off or get to us.
Sure.
After we got married, the churches that we were involved in at the time, those churches didn't bring that up.
There's a lot.
There's
a whole lot.
There was that, but it's so sad and unfortunate how many Christians are just in the dark. They just take it and they don't think anything of it.
Right.
I wish it was more well known.
Yeah.
Well, maybe God's calling you to do something about that.
Maybe
We're doing something right now.
Maybe start a podcast.
Right, you are.
Right.
And hopefully, maybe you'll influence some other young couples. That are
your
in
friendships
this,
with people.
This journey.
Yeah. Well, that's one of
Definitely.
the goals. Do we have anything else? Do you have any other
He's
questions?
going to talk about why children matter.
Okay,
go
so
ahead,
let's
Ray.
end
Can we
on
tack
this.
that on?
Briefly.
Short, briefly.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. So why do children matter?
Well, back to, the fact that we're asking that question shows you the anti-life culture we live in, the pro-death culture, essentially. So children matter because children are the means of dominion. We're back to Genesis 1, okay? Be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth and have dominion over it. You can't do that in a lifetime. You do it generationally, okay? So children are educated. They then educate their children, and then those children educate their children. And that's how cultural capital is built up over generations and generations, centuries. It's not like all of a sudden in 1950 we woke up one day and scientists could make the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Oh, we can make cars. We can do all these things. No, it was generations of capital, building and building and building and building. So you eliminate children, you're basically now, as a culture, civilization, whichever word you want to use, you are now declining because you have fewer people to pass on the knowledge and information to, and over time, and books have been written on this. I mean, cultures that lose a pro-marriage, when I say pro-heterosexual monogamous marriage, a pro-family ethos, those cultures do decline. It's been demonstrated. Cultures that are monogamous, that are pro-life, that are pro-family, they build cultural capital and they grow and they expand. So if you're a Christian and you care about God's word, and if you care about obeying, be fruitful, if you care about dominion, part of that command is having children, and then of course, obviously training them. Okay, but without that, I mean, and not only the culture declines, the church declines. And so, you end up in the situation really we're in now. I mean, you think about 60 million abortions,
Yeah.
and let's say half of those were Christian women who did it. What's that say about the blood on the church?
Yeah.
What's it say about the anti-natal philosophy that's invaded the church? Things that are just like assumed in our culture are so ungodly. Oh, 2 kids, that's plenty.
Yeah.
Well, okay, chapter and verse, please.
Yeah.
No, really.
Yeah.
So much of our worldview, even Christians, is unbiblical. Because they just take in the culture around them, and they're not studying the Word and really learning what the Word is saying, to not just to them in a devotional sense, but how to live in every area of life. And since we're talking so much about the life issue, abortion, that is the window to the world. Because if a pastor will open his mind and really look at this will open up a door to all kinds of issues, political and social. Okay, and if you're closed-minded about this issue, then I believe that you will be closed-minded in developing a real biblical worldview. Christians, say they love the Lord, they say they love His Word, but it's an hour and a half on Sunday morning, and they walk out of the church and they live like the world. They talk like the world, they think like the world. And Jesus is there, maybe if they're having a hard time with something, but they're not thinking God's thoughts after Him, So if you really cultivate a pro-family attitude, a pro-child attitude, well, then you think, oh my God, well, how do I educate? Now I got to think about education. Now I got to think about, my kids are going to grow up. What are they going to do? I'm not going to let them sleep around. I got to think about sexual morality. Oh, I got to think about what they're watching on TV. So now I got to think about entertainment and art. What about the music they listen to? I got to think about music. Boom.
That's what I was going to say, babe. I was going to say, why do children matter is because, oh my gosh, the Lord uses them in our life to grow us in phenomenal ways.
Oh, yeah.
And to teach us so much about Him. And, I really think that's part of His design. He wants us to know Him. How better to know Him than to have children, to then learn about sacrificial love, where you're laying down your life for your children.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd do anything for your kids. It's powerful, and Scripture says that children are a blessing. That's why they matter. They bless us. God uses them to bless us, and they bless us in ways we don't even realize
really.
until down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really
you have to
good.
grow up if you're going to really parent.
It matures you.
Yeah.
And we need to be matured.
Amen.
That's
You want
really
to stay
good.
as children.
That's really good. Well, David and Diane, thank you so much for being on the show. On a personal note, we love you both.
Love you too.
And
We love you guys.
your ministry, your life has been an absolute blessing.
Thank you.
In my life specifically, but in our lives as a married couple.
And to our children.
Yeah, and your service to the Lord, both of yours, is absolutely not in vain, and it is a wonderful testament to our Lord and to eternal life that He's given to us. So I just want to thank you so much.
Well, thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
We appreciate that, Jesse.
Absolutely.
To God be the glory.
Yeah.